Sorry, Frank, you need to block
Frank,
manually
hey,
your camera.
man, I love it. Everyone, oh, that was Frank. Frank does all of our background Zoom tech. There he is again. Thanks, Frank. Feel free to hang out. Just sit there and be pretty, man. Um, I do want to thank our translators. I think I don't know, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we will have translated in 7 different languages. And that includes the manual. We got the manual translated in 7 languages. So I'd like to thank everybody that worked on that. Sandra, you're one of the translators I can see, so your job is to slow me and Michael down. We'll be doing simultaneous translations, so we'll try to speak nice and slow. The plan for today is to really introduce the course that Geshe Michael will be teaching, which is the 2nd chapter of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And that is September 20 to 29. So we'll talk more about that event later on. So that's one of our primary objectives, is to if you want to sign up, what can you expect from that course? Secondly, we want to talk about, what's in the text. Why is the text worth studying? What's cool about it? And so we invited Michael Johnson on, as we do for all of our courses, to discuss these texts. We will have theoretically 15 minutes for question and answer at the end. And then we'll kind of wrap up and we'll put the links on for the main course with Geshe Michael. So that's our plan for today. That's our big goal, is to, provide an opportunity for people to learn about the event, for people to get excited about the text, to learn a little bit about, why we're studying it in the first place. And then, to get connected to the event itself. So I'd like to thank Michael Johnson. Michael is a good friend of mine. He teaches the Sanskrit part of the event with Geshe Michael. And he also teaches as part of our Lady Naguma programs. Right now, he is immersed in teaching the anatomy portion of our 200-hour yoga teacher training. And, he's been in the game for, I don't know, decades, not years, but decades. And, has owned yoga studio before. Had the suffering of owning a yoga studio. No. Taught teacher trainings in yoga studios and has run many teacher trainings, and now teaches at the Ayurvedic Institute, teaching Sanskrit and philosophy, and manages to look after a dog, manages to raise his son, and is in a relationship with his beautiful partner. So, that's the short and sweet intro of Michael Johnson. I really appreciate that you're here. So let's begin. We did an event last week for those that weren't here. And I talked about the history of the text, the author, Master Swapmarama, and we talked about the content of the first chapter. So we kind of reviewed what we taught what Geshe Michael taught in January or February. You so what was we reviewed that first chapter of teachings. Today, I want to take a bit different approach and talk about the second chapter, which is the one Geshe will teach. We also talked about one of the main topics of that first chapter was the asanas, but another was distinguishing Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. So to get people up to speed, Michael, I wanted to ask you two questions. The first, where you first encountered the text, and in your view, how does it fit into the world of yogic literature? Like, place this text in context for people that maybe aren't so familiar with it.
Well, thank you so much for this introduction and for the opportunity to teach in this training. I'm very excited to be a part of it and offer Sanskrit so that people can not fear the language, but appreciate it and better understand the text. I first encountered the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, I guess back in 2001, when I did the living yoga training at the Satchidananda Ashram. And it was presented to me as a text that one ought to study if you want to be successful in Hatha Yoga. And the version that I landed on was from Swami Vishnu Devananda. It was his translation and commentary. And one of my favorite things that I learned from that particular commentary was how he described Jalandhara Bandha. He said, if you want to do Jalandhara Bandha correctly, then imagine you're wearing your favorite and most expensive white shirt, and then hold a ripe plum between your chin and your chest. That's Jalandhara Bandha. It always stuck with me. So you're not squeezing too hard, obviously, but you take it seriously. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika is it's an amalgamated text, meaning that it's a lot of other texts put together. You can see verses have been taken from earlier texts like the Dattatreya Shastra, perhaps even the Amrita Siddhi, which is the oldest known Hatha Yoga text, probably from the 11th century. And it has a lot of the most valuable information in one location, which is great for anyone who wants to immerse themselves in understanding Hatha Yoga. It's probably the best text to start with.
Yeah. Those two texts, the Amrita Siddhi and the Dattatreya Shastra, I have in my mind to try to get Geshe Michael to teach. So I'm hoping that I fear and hope this might be the last time he teaches the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, sometimes just called the Hatha Pradipika.
Yeah.
So for those that didn't catch those names of those texts that Michael shared, I'm plotting to try to get Geshe Michael to teach those texts. And if I'm successful, it's very conceivable that this will be the last time that he runs through the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So we'll talk about that more later, but there's a lot of yogic texts. And, the world has focused on the Yoga Sutra, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Bhagavad Gita. And those are the three main texts, yogic texts Geshe Michael has taught. But there's a lot more out there. And so, we'll keep asking Geshe Michael to run through some of those. But let's go back to this text. Michael, I wonder if you could take a little bit and to, nicely run us through the flow of the second chapter. What is there an order to it? What are the subjects? How do they fit together? And really give people a feel for what's in it.
The second chapter is perhaps the most exciting chapter. It contains a lot of the pranayama techniques that are still popular and in play today. And it starts off with just a summary of the first chapter in like a single verse, saying that once you become firmly established in asana, then you should begin to study pranayama.
I think we have that. I think we have that on the PPT, Sophie. Sorry, Michael, to interrupt.
No, it's all good.
There we go. There it is, just like that. Oh, we lose our immersive view, though. Okay, sorry, please continue.
And it also, the second verse is quite a good one. It talks about the relationship between the breath and the mind. So as is the breath, so is the mind. If your breathing is disturbed as it moves in and out, this means your mind is afflicted. But it also says by smoothing out the breath and making your breath calm and peaceful, your mind will also become calm and peaceful. Nishchalam chittam nischalevate. It's just a brief summary of that relationship between the breath and the mind. And then it goes on to talk about, before you do any of the techniques, there might be some obstacles that you need to navigate. So it talks about the doshas and how our nervous system can be out of balance. And it offers the shat karmas, or the shat kriyas, to help address those imbalances so that you can practice pranayama. One example of that might be you have a cold or you're experiencing allergies and you can't breathe through one of your nostrils or both of them. And there's a variety of techniques that you can use in order to dilate the nostrils so that you can breathe again. Perhaps the most popular shat karma or shat kriya that of the 6 cleansing actions that is still in use today is kapalabhati. It's the forceful exhale with the unforced inhale, like this, which is fantastic for not only helping you wake up if you're sleepy, but it really does help to clear out the nostrils, at least for a few minutes. There are other ways that it proposes as well that I'm not a fan of, but must have been all the rage back in the 15th century, like sticking a string in your nose to where it goes in the back of your mouth, and then you like do some plumbing with the string. I've done that a couple times, and I'll probably never do that again, unless I have to. Another technique that a lot of people do today is the jalaneti, where it teaches you how to pour saline water in one nostril until it comes out the other one. And if you combine that with a little bit of oil to avoid your sinus cavity from drying out, this can also be a really helpful tool for dealing with being inundated with not clean air. If you want to help cleanse out your sinuses. My wife does this, I think, quite regularly. But yeah, like the shat karmas are not required if you're already in a healthy, fit state of mind, but they're good to know in case you ever need them. The pranayama techniques that are mentioned after that are 8 in number, and they're kind of preparatory to help you be able to do a specific technique called nadi shodhana. And each one is for a specific way to cleanse out the inner channels, so that way you can get all the prana to enter into the sushumna and Nadi Shodhana is the main technique that it asks you to practice 4 times a day. And you can clearly tell that from the first chapter that this is a serious text. Unlike the Yoga Sutra, it goes into much more detail on how to do these techniques. And it also emphasizes the importance of retreat. There's lots of dinging noises. I don't know what that means. It'll slow down. Maybe that's what that means. Yeah, but there are other techniques that are mentioned in detail. So if you want to learn how to do pranayama well, this is a great opportunity to learn from not only a very important text in the Hatha Yoga tradition, but from some experienced practitioners like yourself, Earle. Didn't you do a lot of these in retreat?
Yeah, I did, and that's going to tie into a question that we had from one of the participants. Sophie, I sent you a different PPT. This is a great PPT that introduced the author, but let's see if we can get a different one. And so, when we look at the Pradipika, it's kind of like an encyclopedia of practices in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily like a progression of you would do this one and then you would do this one and then you would do this one and then you would do this one. It's like it's a whole book of different practices that we can have in our toolbox, so to speak. And so it's a really fantastic text to take into retreat, because that's, then there's a lot of time to, experiment with them and see which ones work and which ones don't. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to do a 3-year retreat where I had a lot of time to do whatever the hell I wanted. And a lot of that was these Hatha Yoga practices. And again, and leaving retreat, having done that, I thought, how hard would it be to teach this text if you hadn't had that time to practice the practices? And that doesn't necessarily mean long retreat. People studied and lived these practices over many, many, many years. But I think one of the things about the Pradipika is that it's much harder to get good teachings on than the Yoga Sutra. There's 1,000 commentaries on the Yoga Sutras. They're all over the place, and many, many good ones from many different perspectives. And I don't find the same with the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It's hard to find translations. And it's hard to find translations from people that aren't only from a scholarly background. So to have somebody translate the text from the original Sanskrit that has also taken this text into 3-year retreat, like Geshe Michael, is quite rare. And I think it's very, very beneficial, to, obviously, when we teach this text, I've had the experiences of it, and I don't think that's all that common. I wonder if I keep sending the wrong PPT to somebody. Let me just see what's going on here. Hold on a second.
No worries. I'll just add while you're doing that.
Yeah.
The Amrita Siddhi, which is the earliest currently extant or known Hatha Yoga text, was a Vajrayana Buddhist text. And this was at a time where India was being colonized from the outside, and a lot of the traditions were lost. So when you get to the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's almost the exact same practices, but a lot of the context and remnants from that tradition are not as easy to pick up on. So it's nice to have someone who has familiarity with Vajrayana Buddhism to explain the context around these practices. So very great.
Give me one more second. I need to try to see what's going on with our PPTs. I'm sorry. This is totally my fault. How embarrassing.
And I think that the end, or maybe it's in every class, you get a little bit of the fourth chapter mixed in with the second chapter, which is excellent, as pranayama as a catalyst to help you practice meditation. The last chapter is not just about meditation, but it's a deep, very amazing chapter with lots of hidden, what's sometimes called twilight language, about what happens in the channels during meditation that only someone like Geshe Michael with that type of expertise would be able to pick up on and present as well as he does.
Yeah. Keep going. Give me another second. Buy me another second.
Back in the day, 2007, I think it was, all the rage at our yoga teacher training was hype about this specific course, the second chapter of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and how you need to go. Like, cancel all of your plans, come to chapter 2 of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. I wasn't able to do that, but I did come for 3 and 4, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
I was eventually able to study chapter 2 with Lama Marut, Sumati Marut.
Yeah.
So it's a great chapter.
Okay. We're going to fly without the PTT. It's fine. There was only a couple slides. My apologies. I want to get back to that idea, though, of taking this text into retreat and using it. And one of the ways I did use it was all of those shat karmas or shat kriyas. And my experience was a little bit different than Michael's. I really, really loved them. And I'll put it in the chat, the verse. And then hopefully it can get translated. But, well, I'll read it. The 6 practices, they're called cleansing, lower abdomen treatment, nasal clearing, distraction prevention, abdominal fluid reduction, and sinus refreshing. So this is a major component of the second chapter. And what I learned in retreat was I had been taught in my life how to clean the outside of my body, quite well. I knew that. I got that from my parents. Go grab a shower, get a little bit of soap. Back in the day when I had hair, wash your hair. And I never was taught how to clean the inside of my body. And these shat karmas or shat kriyas, shat means 6. They really, really were effective for me in cleaning the inside of my body. And so one of the ones we talked about was jalaneti, where you're pouring water in one nostril and it comes out the other. And there's another form of that called sutra neti. Sutra means a thread. And it's a waxed piece of cotton that you stick up the nostril, and then it bends down, you grab it and pull it out your mouth. And for me, my experience was it just opened up so many passageways in the nasal region. Like there's a very specific cavity on the top of the roof of my mouth that I never knew existed because there was secretions coming out of it. And it really cleaned everything up in a very profound way. And my breathing got so much better for my asana practice that it just felt like a different level of power. And there's also another one where you swallow a cloth all the way down to your abdomen. slowly, bit by bit, and then you pull it back out. And so I've done that one. I didn't find that so useful. I found it extremely interesting and fun, and but not so useful. And so there was this question of how do we know how much purification to do? Like, how do we know when to stop doing those cleansing practices? Is it possible to be clean enough? And we're going to do a retreat at Diamond Mountain in December over New Year's, and we'll be looking at these practices of the second chapter, the pranayama practices, the capsule practices, but also some of these shat karma practices. And we'll have a nice controlled environment to practice those for those that want. But what I found was there's treatment for a specific thing. And so the treatment for swallowing that cloth is for, one of the reasons for, as I understand, is for asthma. The text that I've read from Swami Muktabodhananda talks about the benefits of that for people with asthma. I don't have that problem. And so I didn't find, sorry, I'll slow down a bit, I'm getting all excited. I didn't find that practice that effective because I didn't have the ailment that that's a treatment for. I think I did have the congestion that really I benefited from the Sutra Neti and the Jala Neti a lot. And what I learned was there is a schedule that my body needed to do these internal cleaning practices. And some of them were very, very difficult. There's another one called Shankala Prakshalana. This is hard enough to say. Shankala Prakshalana. And it's just drinking a lot of salt water. And and then it just cleansed the whole system from top to bottom. And I don't do that in practice anymore. It was incredibly difficult, but I also found it incredibly effective. And then I saw that, once a year, that was an effective practice for me to do. If I did the Sutra Neti once a month, that was an effective thing for me to do. If I did Jala Neti, every day or every other day, there's a schedule of, there's another practice called Basti that I would do once in 3 months that cleans the lower abdomen that I found incredibly effective. I wasn't going to say it, but to be bold, it's giving yourself an enema and then cleaning the lower part of the digestive tract. And you use specific Ayurvedic herbs and specific oils. And here's another one. I'm getting way carried away. That's enough. So there's all these ways to clean the inside of the body. And some of them are, do you want one more? It's called Kunjal Kriya. Not part of the Pradipika, I don't think. Michael, do you know if it's in there? Kunjal Kriya?
And maybe I'll
So the stomach, as we get older, distends a little bit, and there's a valve that drains the stomach called the pyloric valve. And as we age, it's like a sock. That sock gets bigger, and so we aren't as good at draining the lower part of our stomach. And so Kunjal Kriya, Kunjal, I think means elephant, right? Something like that. And so what you do is very quickly drink a bunch of water and then bring it back up. And it cleans that lower part of the stomach. I believe it's like the elephant because it looks like an elephant's nose when you do the Kriya. I found it a very fast, very quick way to deal with if I'm starting to feel nauseous, if I've eaten something that feels toxic, and then again once every 3 months to clean the body. So to answer that person's question, is there a time to do these practices? Yeah, and we can learn them and get to know what they're for, and then use them as the medicine for what the body needs. Is there a way to do them too much? Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want to be doing some of these kriyas all the time, and certainly not without getting some teaching on them and really understanding their purpose and the method, and then learning them and then figuring out our regularity. Yeah. So that's and so the question of did I do these in retreat, that was one of the things I practiced a lot in retreat, and I found it really, really effective. And so I really look forward to sharing these ideas in the course coming up and in the Diamond Mountain retreat. I think it starts December 27th. We'll introduce that course during Geshe Michael's teachings in September. But enough about that. I wanted to ask you, Michael, about this verse. I'll throw it in the chat. A very strange verse. It says the 8 practices of the capsule are piercing the sun, high victory, thrill sound, cooling off, the bellows, queen of bees, fainting and floating. These all seem like, when you study them, they seem like pranayama practices. So why are they called kriyas, and what are they all about?
Well, these actually are pranayama practices. The capsule is the translation of kumbhaka. And if you want to be technical, some people insist that you ought to be, then it's not a pranayama unless you are creating a kumbhaka. So a kumbhaka is something that happens during an inhale retention or an exhale suspension, where you're engaging at least 2 of the bandhas, mula bandha at the bottom to reverse the flow of apana vayu upward, and Jalantara bandha at the top to reverse the flow of udana vayu downward. And during the exhale suspension, you're also doing Uddiyana bandha, where you basically take the confluence of those 2 winds near the Triveni, and you're basically drawing the navel in and up to move the prana into the sushumna. So unless that feature is added to these breathing techniques, some say it's not actually pranayama, it's just weird breathing. These are actually the 8 kumbhakas, or the pranayama techniques, that come after the shat, or the 6 kriyas. I also wanted to add that it recommends you study these things with the guidance of an expert, someone who knows what they're doing and can help you determine whether or not you need to do those kriyas. And for some of us, that might actually be like an Ayurvedic doctor. They would be able to give you a pretty good assessment and good advice. Or, like an expert from a tradition that you know and trust. But the practice of pranayama is transformative and intense. I was lucky enough to study with B.N.S. Iyengar in India back in 2003. I took his month-long pranayama course. And he was very careful. I only did 1 technique per day. And he insisted on me doing like shavasana afterwards to recover from it and see what it was capable of doing. I found it so therapeutic. So BNS Iyengar was probably in his 70s by then, and had studied with Krishnamacharya, and his guidance was crucial. I'm so glad I had that.
Yeah. What did he talk about? Like, what are some of the problems we can find if we go out of order, if we go too hard, or what's the warnings?
Because these are powerful techniques, if you don't really know what you're doing, you can create one of those imbalances. You can basically make yourself too fiery, too much pitta, or too ungrounded, too much vata. I guess you could create too much groundedness, too much kapha, but I've never seen that with these techniques.
Yeah. So then run us through again the logic behind the flow of the text. So chapter 1 we started with asana. And I think we might have that PPT if we could put the first verse up there when you're ready. Um, and then like take us through again that flow. Like when you say that this is a preparation, that shat kriyas or shat karmas are a preparation for this, what's the flow?
So after expressing that asana is a prerequisite to study pranayama, I'll also add that asana isn't just the physical posture. It's also being firmly established in the yamas and the niyamas. Like in the Yoga Sutra, it says sthira sukhamasana. And a lot of people have translated that your posture ought to be stable and comfortable. But I study with the philosophy professor who says that's a mistranslation. He says, no, you ought to be stable in creating comfort wherever you find yourself. And you do that by becoming firmly established in yama and niyama.
Mm.
And your resolve to do that anytime, anywhere, any place, under any circumstance, eventually can become robust to where not even heat or cold or pleasure or pain dissuade you from practicing the yamas and the niyamas.
What's the yamas and niyamas, just for people that might be unfamiliar?
In the Yoga Sutra, it's nice because you only have 5 of each to remember. That's what most people, I imagine, are most familiar with. But you eventually start to see them grow in size, double in size, like with the Yoga Yajnavalkya, the Dr. Shreya Shastra. So in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you get 10 yamas and 10 niyamas. But the underlying principle is these are ethics. So yama would be the vows that stop the causes of suffering, such as nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, respecting personal boundaries, and the rest. Whereas the niyamas are specifically for once you've reduced the amount of harm and suffering that you're causing, to then start to create the circumstances for success and well-being and abundance. So that's asana in a nutshell. And when you're doing a posture like sukhasana or padmasana or whatever posture you choose to practice pranayama, it's being firmly established in that allows you to be ready for pranayama. And then it goes on to say that you should study pranayama with an expert who not only knows what they're doing, but cares about you and you being successful. At least that's what I gathered from that. And then it talks about the relationship between the mind and the breath. As is one, so is the other. And that can work both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to the vow to work from the inside out and the outside in. Then it talks about the shat karmas for anyone who is experiencing the inability to breathe through both nostrils. And Earle did an excellent job of explaining what most of them are. There was another one that we didn't talk about, distraction reduction, chataka, which is, I hope we do that. This is where you take a candle in a dimly lit room and you, like a staring contest, commit to staring at the candle until 3 tears come from each eye. And if you're dehydrated, that will like never happen. So it's good to make sure you're well hydrated before you start this one. But then it's just feeling the blink impulse and being able to override it. It's a skill that eventually can help you, even if you have the attention hyperactivity disorder that I grew up with. It helps you focus, helps you start to develop the nervous system regulation skills that can allow you to concentrate a little longer. It's also a great way to introduce meditation, not only for people who struggle with that disorder, but to kids, because it gives them an outer object that they can focus on and at least get the idea of a continuous stream of attention on a single object.
Yeah.
As far as the tears part, like, if you're in a contest of staring and you're in it to win it, like, they're tears of joy. But you're supposed to close your eyes after that and see the after image of the flame and watch it dissolve. And that's a pretty cool part of the meditation that I really didn't know existed until I took this course.
Yeah.
But anyways, those are just preparatory exercises to prepare you for the pranayamas. And then the capsule practices that you put in there. If you want to learn Ujjayi breathing, you want to look back historically at like where it was in the 15th century. That's one of the 8 that are mentioned. It's a little bit different than the way we do it today, and it's nice to understand where it came from and how it got to where it is now. This text is great for that. Piercing the sun is basically a form of Nadi Shodhana preparation, where you just are attempting to work on the sun channel, which is twilight language for the right half of your body or the left hemisphere of the brain. And it's targeting clearing out the obstacles for that one. There's also piercing the moon that you don't get in the actual text itself, but is implied there, and a lot of people include that in the commentary.
There's a lot there.
There is.
Yeah.
I think we said we would leave time for questions and answers, though, and we're at that 15
Yeah,
minutes.
let's do that. I hope that gives people an idea of the content of the chapter and the flow of how these practices build, and the importance of learning them in a cohesive way for our Hatha Yoga practice. So let's take some 10 minutes for some questions and answers.
I saw a question in the chat a little bit earlier, which was a good one that I'd love to acknowledge.
Yeah.
The question is from Isabel. What's the difference between Anuloma Viloma versus Nadi Shodhana? Now, it's important to practice yoga when attempting to answer a question like that. So you don't pretend to know in advance what people are talking about. You basically seek to find out, create some space between the seer and the seen, and try to understand what a person means by Viloma, Anuloma. Some people actually mean Nadi Shodhana when they say those terms. They think like Anuloma means the right nostril and Viloma means the left nostril. This is not the case in the Sanskrit, but it has become that in colloquial language. Anuloma literally means to go with the flow. So an uninterrupted breath. whereas viloma means to interrupt the flow. So some sort of transformative breath. So if I were to teach Analoma Viloma, I would basically teach people to breathe in uninterruptedly, but to do a 3-part exhale. And do that 10 times. This is a great way to prepare a person to be able to do the kumbhaka safely and with mastery. So Analoma Viloma prepares you for Nadi Shodhana.
Cool. Great answer, great question.
I missed the very beginning. What was the thing that led you to look into these practices, and when was it? For me, I encountered this text when I went and did the living yoga training at the Satchidananda Ashram in Yogaville, Virginia, back in 2001, when Swami Satchidananda was still there. It was a profound introduction to the yogic lifestyle for me, and this text was a part of that, and it piqued my interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I also studied it in the Shivananda lineage and also with Geshe Michael Roach, the chapter he'll be teaching. Someone asks, we live in Europe. How are can we access the recordings? Yeah, all of the recordings for Geshe Michael's class, I believe, will be done in German. Sandra, give me a thumbs up if that's right, if you know. I need to check because not all languages are doing all aspects of the course. So let me briefly take an opportunity to talk what those aspects of the course are. We'll start the day with a meditation. That'll be early morning Arizona time. We will then have an amazing review class taught by myself of what Geshe Michael taught the day before. And then we'll have a yoga class. From there, we'll take a big long break. And in afternoon Arizona time, sorry, I messed that up. Let me put it in the chat. In the morning, it's just the meditation and the review class. Okay. Then in the afternoon, we're going to come back, energize the body and the mind with some yoga, and be ready for Geshe Michael's classes. After Geshe Michael's classes, Michael will teach Sanskrit. Michael followed by Michael. Okay. So in the morning, we have the meditation and the review class. These times are in New York. Thank you. These are from our website. In the afternoon, we have the yoga, Geshe Michael's class, and then the Sanskrit class with Michael Johnson. Different languages are, not all languages are doing all things, depending on the time zone. Go to the website, register, and you will be guided in what languages the distributors are doing. Okay. I'm sorry, there's just too many languages to go one by one through what everybody's doing. Recordings will be available for everything that the translators have translated. So if you're not there live, as long as your translators and your group is doing that class, you'll get access to the recording. And so, for instance, not every language group is going to be, doing the meditation or the yoga. So those classes won't be recorded and won't be available. Some languages are doing all 5 of those aspects. Okay, back to the questions.
Got another one here. The Pradipika says we should rub sweat into the skin because it makes the muscles strong. if the body isn't purified, does the sweat contain toxins? So this is an interesting question that kind of raises a lamp, a pradipika, you could say, about a common narrative that ought to be brought to light. Do we sweat out our toxins? A lot of people believe we do, but do we? I encourage you to practice yoga and investigate yourself the evidence to support this narrative. And I'll tell you, it's really scant, like less than 1% at best. Whereas a lot of people just have the feeling that sweating gets rid of their toxins. Basically, sweat mainly just cools off your skin when it's hot. It's your body's way of trying to cool itself down. And that's mainly what it's for. There are, however, some sweat glands here, and I'll let you imagine where the other area is, that releases a chemical concoction that is to help you attract the right mate. And that doesn't happen until puberty. And if that's your method of getting rid of toxins is through those ducts, then I think you really ought to go see a doctor quickly and find a better method, because that'll take a long time and probably won't be sufficient. But as far as rubbing the sweat back into your skin after you practice, yeah, I mean, it's a great way to care for your skin with some extra attention. And that outer stimulation can be helpful and beneficial. But yeah, it's basically just salt water, so it's not toxic. Are there body and behavioral signs that will tell me what kind of cleansing practices this person needs? Another great question. So I work at an Ayurveda school where they teach people how to be able to sense this, to take a pulse and to look at like the activity of the nose or the eyes or the tongue, and be able to make these connections. But it's a multi-thousand-year-old tradition. And if that's a skill you want to acquire, I strongly recommend you find someone who knows, who cares about you, and immerse yourself in that. It could take you many years, but I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, and I think the other answer is yoga. To be a personal yoga practitioner, which is the sign. It's like the investigation of the body and the mind. Or we should be a good yoga practitioner and check out these practices and investigate it, like Michael was saying. Does it make sense that the body is sweating out toxins? Is that a thing? Do these practices help? Does it help for me to breathe in and out one nostril? And Michael and I just taught a trauma program, and it was amazing to see how much of the modern advice about how to treat trauma or stress, is in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It was really profound for me to realize how applicable the wisdom of these practices is for stress and for trauma in our lives. So that's a little bit of what you can expect. I'm glad to see there's more questions, because we have a whole course to answer them. There is the QR code. I'm sorry, I felt a little bit scattered about how to answer the question of what's available, what's not. It's very language dependent. All of the clarity comes from your registration process. In that registration process, you can also sign up, I believe, still, correct me if I'm wrong, Benji, for a warm-up course. which has some introductory videos on breathing techniques, and more information on what to expect from Geshe Michael's course. Geshe Michael's course will be September 20 to 29. I think that we've covered what the content of that class will be. Meditation, a review, yoga, Geshe Michael's class, fantastic Sanskrit class, which will be a beginning Sanskrit class, but we're going to take people a little bit further than we did the last time. So it's going to be advanced beginners.
All levels. Anyone can join.
And definitely anybody can join. And you will learn the Sanskrit alphabet and you'll leave being able to, do the alphabet and know how to pronounce Sanskrit properly. And then we've gone over the content of what this program will cover. And I hope I've been able to stress that, it might be the last time that we get to study this with Geshe Michael. As Michael Johnson was saying, the fourth chapter is very, very cool philosophy that to have a Geshe teach us that philosophy is very rare and supreme. But also to have someone teach these ideas that has practiced them in his own 3-year retreat, to me is such a benefit. So he's translated the text from the Sanskrit, through his typical Jetsankapa lens, which is also a unique perspective that we won't find in the common commentaries. And to be able to do that from somebody that's done the work, that went into 3-year retreat and has practiced these for decades. Geshe Michael's been doing retreat for 40 years and been practicing these for 40 years. So, a really beautiful opportunity. So check out the links, check out the warm-up course, check out what is available in your language group. And, I know there's a lot going on. People have access to so many teachings now with Zoom, and if it's something that is of interest, get it on the calendar and try to clear out the schedule. And if you're interested in a Hatha Yoga practice, I don't think there's a better place to start than this. This is a very comprehensive look at what Hatha Yoga is and the main practices of Hatha Yoga. Any last words of advice, MJ?
Well, I'll just echo what you said, that I've never seen anyone translate the fourth chapter as well as he has. And to hear him speak it and do so from the heart would be a rare opportunity indeed. So I'm looking forward to it. And you can learn how to not just speak and appreciate Sanskrit, but maybe even by the end of our 9th class, you'll be able to read the Sanskrit on people's shirts and know what it says. So please join us.
Cool. Big shout out to our translators. Thank you for struggling with an unscripted, people talking too fast talk. Appreciate you so much. Benji, if you can throw the link to all of the cool t-shirts, speaking of t-shirts, we've got some really cool products for this course also. You might have to join for that. Lastly, I want to thank the distributors for everybody that brings people to these teachings, and for the people on the call. Thank you for your interest in these things. Oh my God, I just looked, there's 109 people. If somebody not suggesting it left, there'd be 108. Wouldn't that be magical? So I really look forward to seeing people at the course and to go through this chapter with you. And I really appreciate being part of this community and getting to study these teachings with you. It makes me a better practitioner, better person, happy to be in this Sangha and this community and the strength of it. And I look forward to studying these things with you. And thank you, Michael Johnson. I really appreciate that you joined us. I know you're a busy dude. Okay. So we'll sign off. Bye for now. Really appreciate it. Really look forward to this program. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Benji, Sophie. Sorry for the PPT.
Don't be sorry. Thank you. Bye.